On the recent episode of Lost Legends, I covered the two cancelled ports of Revolt, one for the Xbox and the latter for the Game Boy Color. On that episode, I couldn't gather the most important thing from the two, and that means footage. I'm gonna be straight with you, I made a few mistakes during production, and I want to make this right. I mean, this is what I get when I really started production on the 10th of July, planned on releasing it on the 20th, and then got released 3 days later after the due date. All this while having an actual job outside of YouTube. In other words, I am disorganized. In this video, it's time for me to rectify those mistakes. Revolt deserves some justice. Now, let's start with the Xbox because that's the one I slacked on. In the episode, I said I couldn't get the game running on CXBX Reloaded, and that part remains true. However, one thing I haven't looked deep into was running this on XEMU, or XEMU if some of you like to call it. I said I tried to get it running on there, but it didn't work on me. After the episode went live, that's when I realized something. I didn't set up the emulator properly. So, I grabbed the necessary materials in the rightful spots, and lo and behold, the Xbox BIOS shows up. Also, I got a dashboard too. I'll explain later. This emulator could run Xbox ROMs, but not the way CXBX Reloaded does, which is finding the XBE in the game's directory. XEMU only accepts specialized ISO files called XISO, so I downloaded an app called ExtractXISO, converted the Revolt directory into said XISO, and believe it or not, it works. Now it's time to get some footage. The February build resembles the original PC version since they use the original UI graphics in some settings, but most of the options are broken here. Another thing that's broken are 3 levels, Toys in the Hood 1 and both Titanic levels. The gameplay if you tend to play these levels will be a glitchy mess, as if the skybox isn't rendered. The other levels from what I've played thankfully doesn't have that. The music doesn't play the correct song for their individual levels. The game chose a random track from the game's short playlist. A couple things that are consistent in all of the Xbox builds is the lack of transparency on certain UI elements, plus the sky. And in its place was some black around them. But that's an emulation issue from what I recall. Another thing that isn't an emulator problem is how unfinished the sound design is. Here's a comparison from the vanilla PC version and the Xbox. Yeah, the sound design on the Xbox build is bad. If someone got the battery from far away, that sound will play as if someone's using it close to you. Not only that, the game doesn't know how to change the speed of the sounds. Again, here's a comparison from the PC and the Xbox. This was never fixed in any of the builds, by the way. Next, I tried the August build, which is the Xbox Live demo that was given to some closed beta testers. One difference is that Revolt isn't the only thing you see. It also contained a video I've shown briefly in the Lost Legends video, and some Xbox Live settings. Here's a problem. I needed an OG Xbox Live account, and even if I got the dashboard, I can't connect to Xbox Live anyways because it was shut down years ago. Besides, this probably resembled the June version that PTOP Online played long ago, but without the online-only bollocks. There's also another build I briefly mentioned in the editor's notes, one that's based off the source code. As if Lady Luck dealt with a good hand. This one is the most recent release. This build is possibly playable on CXBX Reloaded, as I definitely saw screenshots of the game in action. I'm gonna stick with Zemu for now, as this one works for me. There are things fixed in this version, like Toys in the Hood 1 and Titanic are seizure inducing. You're able to play this solo, the options are functional and specialized for the Xbox, and lastly, the reflections are working properly. They also added a rear view camera and the ability to change tracks on the fly like in multiplayer, but that will be exploited just to access tracks that you haven't unlocked yet. Good for gathering footage in a tight deadline. One thing that's broken in this version are the cheats. They don't work. Sucks, I know, but what doesn't suck is the system link feature, so you and a few of your friends could play Xbox Revolt without requiring an account for a dead service. This build is just released as of the 29th of July at the time of writing. There will be things fixed in the future, and I'll leave a link in the description for a download. After the whole Xbox stuff is done, now it's time for the feature presentation. The Game Boy Color port. I talked to Quang during the production of the Revolt episode and received no reply. Until 3 days after the video was uploaded. Him and I had a brief conversation. I showed him the episode and he said he handed the ROM to one of the members of the Revolt community. So, I talked to one of the members where he handed the ROM to some other guy for safekeeping. Then we had a little heart-to-heart, and he said he gave me the ROM if I just straight up asked him for it. Sometimes I get a little too elaborate, I'm sorry. Now, ladies, gents, trans, and everyone else. This is the first time I get to show you footage of Revolt for Game Boy Color. Proof that there is a game beyond a few screenshots. Some revealing information is that the game is developed by Digital Creation Studios, a company I haven't heard of, but I don't have enough info about them or its history. I think this company is very short-lived in my opinion. Now, this port of Revolt is obviously a stripped down and portable version of the PC counterpart. You drive one of 16 cars and play most of its tracks, with the exception of Botanical Garden, which doesn't exist in this build. In this footage I get to show you some power-ups, in which some of them don't work. What does work are the singular firework, the bomb, oil slick, fake pickups, the battery, and the ball bearing. The ones that don't work just discard the item. The controls in this game is identical to Race Time, but don't press select if you tend to use the power-ups or else it sends you to a broken title screen. You press the start button to use them. The timer, on the other hand, doesn't act like a normal timer. I mean, the milliseconds count up to 60, and when it reaches to a minute... What?! I don't think that's how the clock works. Now, the levels. When you start playing, there is no countdown, and immediately you start racing. Some of these levels are faithful recreations of the original, while others are entirely new. Unfortunately, the navigation arrow is broken, and this makes the game unbeatable, and navigating the levels is all out confusing. Titanic, Museum 1, and Toys in the Hood 2 are prime examples on how confusing the levels can get without a working guide. Toy World is renamed to Toy Town, and it's very messy looking. I think they use the actual level textures to make some of these tiles. Ghost Town looked much different, and there's no gallows from what I've played. Lastly, Toytanic and its sequel are identical maps, appropriately, but Toytanic 2 had different lighting. Oh, and you can also drive in and out of the pool. So about the sound design. In-game, there is none. The only thing that had sound was that menu music I played in the background earlier. If the sound was implemented according to Quang, then the game would be in an absolute broken state due to its limited space. One thing that would likely be a cause of its cancellation was its level design. I mean, just think about it for a moment. The Nintendo 64 version is okay, the PlayStation version is stress-inducing for the console, and the Game Boy Color tried to recreate the game's massive levels on a screen that's in a 160 by 144 resolution, basically as postage stamp. If it was released and the major bugs are fixed, then this would go on toe-to-toe with the PlayStation version as the worst port of ReVolt in my opinion. One thing that the game should fix is to make the levels shorter and less mazy in some aspects. I mean, this is a Game Boy Color title. There's not much screen space to work with, and there's also some open spaces that lead to dead ends. Not to mention, this is a top-down racer similar to Micro Machines, and even their GBC incarnations looked and played much better than this. But one thing I give ReVolt over its bootleg counterpart Race Time are the graphics aren't just solid tiles. That rally track looks like they got the design down, but don't have time to make the actual textures. And when it comes down to cut content, I fire up YYCHR to take a look, and oddly I couldn't see anything interesting. I was expecting the countdown sprites shown in Race Time, but I did found the water balloon sprites. One mystery is, how would Game Boy Color ReVolt play with these power-ups without the physics tied to the original? Since most of these aren't functional, I bet that some of these just slow down the opponents and nothing else. I think the shockwaves would be treated like the bomb but with a larger hitbox. The water balloons would push the opponents with a spin, and the electro pulse and star would make your opponents stop while they're flashing blue. Then again, I'm just guessing. Let's move on. Two of these problems are now fixed. One, I get to play ReVolt on the Xbox, and another I get to show you footage for the Game Boy Color game I wanted to cover 3 years ago. I'll upload the raw gameplay a little later. There's also another question. Will the GBC version get uploaded to the Hidden Palace? That I won't do. There's a thing regarding about sharing ROMs that aren't mine. They say preservation is king, but I held respect much higher than that. If they told me I could upload the ROM there, I'd do it in a heartbeat. As of now, not today. But what about the bit I said earlier about the link to the custom Xbox build? That's built off the leaked source code. Technically, anyone could compile their own version of Xbox ReVolt if they just wanted to. Only if they have the knowledge on how to make an Xbox game. I just gave you the link to that build because it's the most stable Xbox version we have at the moment. So yeah, that's the update. Enjoy August, stay hydrated, and don't make any explosive gender reveal parties because that's unnecessary, plus we had enough wildfires already. Also, like, comment, subscribe, and follow r/LostLegends. I'll see you in September where I cover Rayman 2, the 2D sequel that once was. I'll see you later. Bye.